My name is Frederick Douglass, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to my home, Cedar Hill. As you stand upon this hillside overlooking our nation's capital, you are standing in a place that meant more to me than words can fully express. This was not merely a house. It was the realization of a dream that seemed impossible when I entered this world as a child born into slavery. I first opened my eyes on Maryland's eastern shore around the year 1818. I was born with no rights that the law was bound to respect. I owned nothing, not my labor, not my future, not even my own birthday. Yet I learned very early that although someone might imprison the body, the mind could still be set free. Secretly learning to read became the turning point of my life. Books opened a world that slavery could never contain. After escaping bondage in 1838, I devoted my life to the cause of freedom. For decades, I traveled across the United States and Europe speaking against slavery and urging Americans to live up to the principles declared in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I edited newspapers, wrote books, advised presidents, and fought for the rights of African Americans and women alike. But during those many years, I rarely stayed in one place for very long. My life belonged to the movement. Everything changed in 1877. President Rutherford B. Hayes appointed me United States Marshal for the District of Columbia, making me one of the highest ranking African Americans in the federal government. The appointment required me to relocate to Washington, and so I began searching for a home. One afternoon, I crossed the Anacostia River and climbed a high ridge east of the city. There stood a beautiful country estate known as Cedar Hill. The house immediately caught my attention, but it was the view that captured my heart. From this hill, I could look across Washington and see the Capitol, the Washington Monument, the Potomac River, and the city whose future I had spent my life trying to shape. I stood in silence, taking it all in. It seemed almost beyond belief that a man who had once been considered another person's property could now look upon the capital of the United States from a place he hoped to call his own. At that time, the estate was owned by the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company. On September 1st, 1877, I purchased the house and nearly 10 acres of land for $6,700, a considerable sum earned over many years through my writings, lectures, and public service. The following year, I purchased adjoining land, expanding the estate to nearly 15 acres. For me, purchasing Cedar Hill was never about wealth or prestige. It was about freedom. Every dollar represented a step in a journey that had begun in slavery. Every room reminded me how far that journey had carried me. When my beloved wife, Anna Murray Douglass, first entered this house, I thought of all she had sacrificed to make that moment possible. Before I escaped from slavery, Anna had quietly saved money, encouraged me when hope was difficult to find, and helped make my escape possible. Without her courage, there would have been no Frederick Douglass for the world to know. She deserved this home as much as I did. Together, we welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Presidents, senators, ministers, educators, journalists, abolitionists, diplomats, and ordinary citizens all climbed this hill to visit Cedar Hill. Conversations that began around our dining table often concerned the future of the nation itself. My favorite room was my library. The shelves were filled with books collected over a lifetime. History, philosophy, literature, science, politics, law, and religion all found a place there. As a young enslaved boy, I had once risked punishment simply to read a few pages. Now I was surrounded by thousands of books. Whenever visitors admired my library, I reminded them that knowledge had first opened the door to my freedom. Many of my later speeches and essays were written in my study overlooking these beautiful grounds. Although slavery had ended, justice remained unfinished. I continued speaking against racial violence, the denial of voting rights, discrimination, and every effort to deny African Americans the full rights of citizenship. I also continued advocating for women's suffrage, believing that liberty belongs to every human being. Outside the house, I found peace in the gardens. I enjoyed tending fruit trees, planting flowers, and walking the winding paths across the property. Gardening taught lessons that politics often forgets. Seeds require patience. Great causes do as well. The work of justice is seldom completed in one generation. Each generation plants seeds that another generation will harvest. Perhaps my favorite place was the front porch. In the evening, I often stood there watching the setting sun cast its golden light upon the Capitol dome.